Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Mentor Nation podcast. I want to thank you for being here today. And if this is your first time, I want to welcome you to the show. And I just want to ask that if you enjoy the episode today, that you just take a second and hit that subscribe button so that you get a notification every single week when I release a new episode. So if you have not already detected, normally I'm so excited to introduce a guest on this show. I usually will publish an episode. I'll spend the entire day anxious just to hear the feedback from friends and followers because, I put a lot of work into these shows and I want to make sure that I deliver value that, really impacts you in some way. But today's episode is quite different. And this is going to be the first time ever that I am republishing an episode that I released a year and a half ago. When I first released it, it was audio only. I'm releasing the actual video and the audio. And unfortunately, I wish that I was doing and releasing this episode under different circumstances. The title of the first episode was 25 years old and given 2 years to live. So I want to tell you a story, and then I'm going to bring the episode on. So this episode is with someone that I'm very proud to know, call a friend, actually one of my wife's closest friends and a colleague of hers. They worked together in real estate for some time. Just a beautiful young girl, incredibly talented. She loved fitness. She loved to travel. She loved to cook really healthy food. And her name is Erika Rich. And at the age, 2 years ago, at the age of 25, she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and she was given 2 years to live. And when I heard the news, I started following her journey. And a few months after, I reached out to her. I was so inspired just seeing how positive she was, how optimistic, how outgoing she was. She was just tackling everything head on. And I just wanted the honor of interviewing her. Not only to get her perspective on life, but just to have her share her greatest advice on how to live, knowing that there's really not much time left. I felt like she had a very unique perspective in that moment. My dream, honestly, was to look back, years later, one day, listen to this episode with her and my wife, and just after she had recovered and got it like beat down, and just listen to this episode again years later and remember and just be thankful for the trials and tribulations that we go through. Unfortunately, God had other plans, and she passed away yesterday morning on Valentine's Day of 2022. And so my dream now is to just share this episode with you as a way to remember her story, but also in hopes that you might have a shift in perspective in your own life. I know that we have, as a family, we slowed down, we spent quality time together, we talked, we became vulnerable, and we don't usually do that. And it was an important moment. And I hope that after listening, you can stop for a few minutes and just think about the things that you can be grateful for. Maybe even take a moment to do something important that you have been neglecting, whether it's a vacation, telling someone that you love them, or just spending some quality time with someone that you care about. Now, the last thing I'll say is this interview is not a story about sadness or regret. It's rather a story about hope and optimism. And it is as much of an honor to share this interview with you as it was to record it. Here's the story of the life of Erika Rich. Thank you. Erika, thank you so much for being on the Mentor Nation podcast. I've been looking forward to this interview for a really, really long time. And so I just want to thank you for being on.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I am new to podcasting. This is only my second one.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to make some introductions after we're done. And so, well, one of the biggest things that I'm really excited about, and like I told you before we started recording, I'm kind of nervous. This is like something that I've been looking forward to. And this is very different than any episode that I've ever done in podcasting. And so I want to give the audience a little bit of backstory. So Erika, we have a little bit of a personal relationship. So my fiance is on a real estate team and Erika was on that same real estate team. And are you 25 or 26 now?
I'll actually be 27 in like 9 days.
Ah, happy birthday. So you're almost 27 years old, and you were living in Nashville, and you guys were just absolutely crushing it in real estate. I was following you guys, and we got to hang out several times. And then I'll never forget the day that, Kat came home crying, right? She was just like bawling her eyes out. And I was like, dude, what's wrong with you? And she like talked about going to the doctor, or like, I want you to explain the story, but bottom line, found out you had stage 4 cancer literally out of nowhere. And it was just like, I just remember like being up that night, and I was just like, oh my God, like I just put myself in your shoes for a minute. I'm like, could you imagine just like running marathons and doing your thing, and then one day you have like a headache or something, and then you go to the doctor and they tell you like news like that. And so, I want to get into that, and I want to ask you a lot of questions that I think a lot of people would want to know if they were faced with similar circumstances. But thank you for being on, and I want to just have you take a little bit of time, and if you could just tell us a little bit about your story, and then how that led up to the day that you found out or got your diagnosis.
Yeah. So before I got diagnosed, no one in my family has any history or anything, but I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was super active as a child. I was on like any sports team you can think of, was never allowed to quit. So I played softball, soccer, track, like you name it, I played it. And then I went to Wittenberg University in Springfield, Ohio for college for soccer. And once I graduated from there is when I made my way to Clarksville, Tennessee for real estate. I was dating someone at the time, and he lived somewhere he loved but hated his job. So I was like,
military?
No.
Oh, okay.
He lived in Dallas. I made my way to Clarksville because I just wanted to do something I loved. And I met this guy, and he had like a real estate team and a construction team. And I was like, oh my God, my favorite things, like for sure. So I interviewed, got the job. He paid for me to get my real estate license, and I started doing lead generation with him. Quickly realized after visiting a friend in Nashville that Clarksville was awful. I would make a friend, and they literally would be like, okay, bye, I got to go to like North Carolina. And I'm like, who am I going to hang out with?
That's right.
So my boss at the time kind of did some things that I was not a big fan of. And so I had been thinking about going to Nashville, but I kind of felt obligated to be there. And then after that, I was like, I'm out of here. So I found the number 1 team in Nashville, was interviewing with them and driving back and forth from Clarksville to Nashville, and ended up getting that job. And so I told my boss on a Monday that I was doing that. And by Wednesday, I was in my new apartment in Tennessee, starting my job that following Monday. So I worked with that real estate team for a while and was doing lead generation. And at the time, I was just, I wasn't an agent. It just wasn't like how I imagined like real estate to be, and was just getting really depressed. And I was like, I don't know if this is for me. And it just kind of showed in my numbers. And so because of that, thankfully he fired me, because the way my contract was set up, it just like, was awful. So thankfully I got fired, but it was in the summer. So I needed to find something to do. So I got some fun, like Nashville jobs. I was driving like golf carts, during like CMA Fest, making so much money. And then I actually ended up crashing one of those golf carts into the basement of the Icon. I like hit like a pipe and completely ripped off like the whole roof of this golf cart, and had to like, and the lady I was with, we're like still best friends to this day, and we love telling this story, but I had to call my boss and tell him, and it was like the scariest thing. And I quit the next day because I was like, I can't drive this. That was a complete accident. You really yelled at me. Like, I'm sorry, but we're done here. And so I was jobless again. And luckily I was living with my boyfriend at the time. So he was able to like cover things like rent and groceries and stuff.
Sure.
Also around that time, I found out I had celiac disease, which is when you're allergic to gluten. Mm-hmm. And they found the cancerous polyp in my intestines. And that's when I became gluten-free. But after that, I started, that boyfriend and I broke up, and I met someone else. And he told me about this job where his friend was making a crap ton of money doing IT recruiting. So
Mm-hmm.
I kind of got into that field. And while I was doing that is kind of when I started, a friend introduced me to the vegan lifestyle, and I started ClassPass and started doing yoga for the first time, and
And
kind
you're
of,
25 at this time
yeah,
ish. Okay. So you're
20, I probably turned 20. Well, no, I would have been right out of college. So I probably was closer to like 23, because that was like 5 years ago
oh, I
when I
see.
first moved to Nashville.
Got it.
I'm 27 now, so like 22, 23, around that time frame. And then when I was working my corporate job and kind of just exploring this healthy lifestyle, I went vegan. Everyone in my office thought it was crazy. I didn't shut up about it. I was one of those people. And then I just really embraced this healthy lifestyle. And one day I was driving to work and I looked in the mirror and I was like, I'm going to own all the McDonald's one day and I'm going to turn them into healthy restaurants. And I, at the time I was like, okay, let's do that. And I think that was in like November that I had that like aha moment. And then I like asked my boss if I could start doing yoga on my lunch break, and he told me no. And so by December of like, I don't even know when that was. I probably would have been like turning 24, maybe 23.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to quit the corporate life, and I went and started working with Lululemon and a boxing company. And Lululemon truly just changed my life. Like, them as a company was just so invested in me.
Mm-hmm.
And I made my first vegan friends. I just created this community. That's kind of where it all started, and like how I met Chris. And it was for the holiday season, so it wasn't like a full-time thing. And Lululemon does this thing where they help you like do like goal setting and just like visualize your best life. And it helped me realize that I wanted to be a yoga instructor. And so I just so happened to, after that like thing that they do with you, walked into my favorite yoga studio the next day, and they just so happened to have teacher training that started that Friday. Very expensive, had no idea how I was going to pay for it, but I signed up. And it was when Nashville had that like crazy snowstorm. So it
Yeah.
got pushed back a week. And so I had a week to like get the books and like get up and like read and everything. And so I started yoga teacher training that like at the beginning of January, and Lululemon didn't ask me to come back after the holiday season. So I didn't really have a job. I just spent like, I didn't spend any money on yoga teacher training yet. I hadn't figured that out. And then I started cooking for the first time for someone who actually, he was like running a chicken restaurant and was trying to go vegan, but I think he was just hitting on me. And that was like my first client ever. And I literally started a business, but like didn't really start a business, but someone just let me cook for them. And this is like what I wanted to do. And so I was doing that and going to yoga teacher training. And then after yoga teacher training was coming to an end, and I was like, I just want to like live out of a suitcase and travel. And I wrote down this like husband manifestation, and then like 3 days later, this guy slid into my DMs and was like, hey, and I was like, oh my gosh, it worked. Like, I've been learning about all this stuff at yoga teacher training. I was like getting vulnerable, and I was like, this is what we're talking about. And so him and I met, and he was much older than I was. And we went sailing for like a month or so, and I got my sailing certification so I can legally drive a catamaran if you ever need anybody.
And you had a really interesting, like 2-3 years of life. I mean, I'm surprised we're only talking about a 2-3 year window here. This is
like once
really
I got into Nashville, life got crazy. Like, I really just jumped into it. Like, I've always kind of been like that, where I've just like went with the flow. Nothing's really like, I didn't really think about things, I guess you could say. Like, I just do them.
Absolutely. And I'm excited you're talking about some of this, because I feel like this is a setup for what we're going to get into here in just a little bit, and how mindsets change. And so you're sailing around, you're living a carefree lifestyle, and you hinted at like you're starting to cook and meal prep. And, for those listening, Erika, you've been very healthy for your whole life pretty much, right? Like, you've never been the type of person that's just eating junk. I mean, it seems like you've really went vegan and gluten-free, and you started focusing more on it, but it seems like you've been healthy pretty much forever, active.
Yeah, like, I've been very, very active. I have always been playing a sport, played soccer throughout college, but and it was kind of when I and I was super vegan and gluten-free up until I went sailing, because it's really hard to do both those things when you're on a boat in the middle of the ocean, like doing nothing.
All these fish.
Yeah, exactly. It was like my only source of protein. And so that's kind of when I had to start, like, because I went vegan because I was scared of getting things like cancer.
Yeah.
Because I was learning about everything that was in our food and how terrible McDonald's was for you. So then when I went sailing and I like wasn't in the comforts of my kitchen, and
Right.
produce place wasn't down the street, it was the first time I was like really out of my element. And this guy was like, "Girl, like chill, like you're really kind of intense about this." And I was like, "I don't want to get cancer." Like
Oh
I have
man.
to. But yeah, right. So I went sailing for a little while, and it was when I came back because I had ended my lease. I literally sold all of my stuff and just left. And I got back and it was like, okay, like now what? Like I wrote this husband manifestation. Like I thought me and this guy were going to like get married, and realized very, very quickly that that was not going to be the case. And whenever I got back is kind of when I first started noticing like symptoms that I didn't realize were like symptoms for things.
Like what? Tell me a little bit about like what did you notice?
The first thing I noticed was just like nipple discharge, which was like
Yeah.
super small and like nothing I ever would have thought to be like breast cancer.
Mm.
And that was probably like April, May. And then I didn't have a job or anything when I got back. And so I ended up working for a Nashville paddle company and doing that for the summer, and started cooking again, which is when I started I actually started cooking for like a company like that did meal
Yep.
prepping and stuff. So I had a little bit more like structure around it. I wasn't just solely dependent on myself for like clients and stuff.
Right.
And it was a really cool company. I had some like really cool clients, got to cook in like beautiful kitchens. And
That's
then
awesome.
I quickly realized I was not going to be able to pay rent and things. And I was actually living with a friend for free at the time, and she kicked me out of her place because I wasn't able to pay rent. And at the time I had been interviewing with Aaron, and I'm so grateful for like wanting to get back into real estate, because the guy I was seeing was doing commercial real estate. And I was like, I miss this. Like, I need to find just a better team to work with or something,
Right.
like to give like real estate another shot. I just wanted to try it again. And I had thought that my license was in retirement. So I was looking for realtors, and someone mentioned to me from my old team about Erin Kruger that was hiring. And I was like, okay. So I interviewed with Erin, got to meet her, and I was like, I need to work for this lady. And what's crazy is because of everything I had going on with that guy getting kicked out, I was probably the most like depressed I'd ever been in my entire life, and was putting on this face on social media because
Right.
I did all this crazy stuff, and everyone was like, Erika, don't do that. And I was like, no, I'll be fine. So I had this big front on, and I'm so grateful to this day that Erin hired me, because she truly, I've told her the story before, but she's truly saved my life.
Wow.
It was like, we were at the end of the interview process, and she hadn't responded to me yet, but it was like CMA awards. And that guy that I had been talking to, like, wasn't responding to me. And so I had just a really, really rough night where I got drunk and got in my car and actually ended up almost killing myself. And the next day I woke up and Anthony Bourdain had actually committed suicide. And I was like, whoa, this guy is someone I really look up
Wow.
to. And if he can't even do it, like, how am I going to do this? And so I really had a rough weekend. And then I don't know what it was, but that following Tuesday, I emailed Aaron and was like, I just think what's missing from my life is like a group of women and yada, yada, yada. And Aaron emailed me back and was like, you've got the job. And I was like, what? And so she hired me despite the fact that I didn't have like a working computer, like nowhere to live. And then
So I want to pause for a second and ask you a question. So you've been pretty much on your own, it seems like, since you were young. Like you didn't have a whole lot of family to lean on, or like a rich family or anything like that. Like
my
is
parents
so
are happily divorced. Very
Got it.
blended. Like I've got stepsisters, all the things.
Got it. Okay. So you've been fending for yourself since you were really young, it seems
Very
like.
young, yes.
And you're living far away. I mean, obviously your family's from Pennsylvania.
Yeah, everyone is in Pittsburgh here.
And then you were in Nashville. Okay, got it. I just wanted to part because it's it seems like you're struggling a little bit, but a lot of people, at your age at that time, they have at least some people they can lean on. It seems like you didn't have that, and so you got the job, Erin Kruger. take us to the next step. Like, how long were you doing real estate before everything happened?
Yeah. So I'm 25 at this time, and I had just met Erin, and I was her assistant, and I was working on getting my license back. And so, um, as we got further closer to December, started noticing just like a pinch in my neck, and like my right leg hadn't been working as well as it is. So I started kind of noticing more symptoms just from doing yoga and just being very like body conscious. And then still meal prepping, trying to do all of those things at the same time, like trying to find somewhere to live. I still hadn't really had that like grounded down. And
Sure.
then December, as you know, we switched to Compass Real Estate. So then that happened, and I'm still trying to get my license. I think I maybe had got it. I sold my first house to one of my best friend, Kylie. And then that February, I actually got baptized with Cross Point.
Awesome.
And come March of, that would have been 2018, I had my full diagnosis that I was stage 4 breast cancer.
Ooh, so tell me, okay, so you had some symptoms and you noticed something is not quite right. And so when did you actually decide to go to the doctor for that?
I had a moment with that friend who I crossed a golf cart with. We just like were at her apartment, and she gave me this like natural deodorant because she knew I was into those things. It was like, you can't use that other stuff. Like, it gives people breast cancer. And I just started breaking down. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I've been noticing these things, and I don't know why, but just hearing you say that just makes me so nervous. And she was like, you need to go see your gynecologist. And I was like, I don't even have one. She was like, what? And I was like, well, I just haven't really established doctors since I've been in Nashville. And so I found one. Amazing lady. She was also a vegan, so we had a lot to talk about. But I had no idea how to do like a breast exam or any of that stuff. And she did one for me, and like right away she was like, you need to go see the Nashville Breast Center. And so I quickly set up an appointment. And when I went in, my doctor just like immediately started prepping me for breast cancer. And I was like, what? Like,
Wow.
what? And it was kind of game on from there. That was in like the beginning of February. And by the end of February, I had my full diagnosis.
So, okay, so you go in, you get examined, and like, how do they do it? And I'm really curious because I mean, it's just cancer's everywhere, right? I don't
Yeah.
think there's anybody that's going to listen to this that doesn't have a family, a friend, a loved one, or even themselves that like it's everywhere. So you go in and they prep you. Like, how do they do? Does the doctor just come into the room and like have this weird look on his face, and he's just like, Eric, I have bad like what happened exactly?
Um, so when I first went in, he just kind of did a breast exam. He's like, we're going to have to do a biopsy. So
Okay.
I had to get that done. And at the time, I really hadn't told anyone. I remember whenever I went in, they did the biopsy. I don't even think my mom knew I was at that doctor's appointment. And so he came in and took the sample and like set it all up like that first appointment. And afterwards, after he like did everything, I was like, well, if it's not breast cancer, what else could it be? He was just kind of like I think he maybe told me it could be like benign or something. And I was
Sure.
like, okay. And I'll never forget, I had moved into an apartment by myself, and I hadn't cried. And I remember opening my apartment door and just closing it and just falling to the floor and just like weeping. And I called my mom quickly afterwards, and I couldn't even like talk. Like I couldn't even like get words out to be like, tell her about it. I told her finally, I was like, I just went to the doctor's office, and I just want to let you know what they like told me. And I just remember her going silent on the phone, and she was like, okay, well, do I need to come to Nashville? And I was like, no, like I'll be fine. Like everything will be okay. I was like, but my doctor gave me his phone number if you want to call and ask. And of course, like any mom would, she immediately called the doctor, and he said that I would probably feel more comfortable if I had family here. So
Sure.
my sister literally got on a flight the next day and was in Nashville and was at my next appointment with me. And that was when they gave me the news that it was, in fact, breast cancer.
Ugh, and they said it was stage 4 at that.
Not at that time. I
Not
had
at
to
that
get
time.
Mm-mm. I still had to do, because whenever you find out it's stage 4, it means that it moved somewhere else. So they took, then they had to get a biopsy done of my liver and also my lymph node. And when those results came back, it was the end of the month, end of February. And that's when they told me it was stage 4. And so I still had to do all of my scans, like the heart things, like all those tests I had to do while I was in Nashville. And God bless Erin Kruger, because she came to a lot of my doctor's appointments with me and helped my parents and I kind of like talk and walk through that. And was kind of like my mom here in Nashville while I was like going through all of this. And I'll never forget, I called her and we had a meeting that day, and I was like, Erin, I can't come to our, well, I first told her about the news, and I was like, but I can't come to our meeting on Thursday because I'm getting evicted from my apartment. So if you don't mind telling the girls. And she was like, what? So I had just told her I had gotten breast cancer and also that I had this going on. And it was so much going on in my life at that time. And I remember I ended up making it to that appointment because I went to court and got everything taken care of. But it was really at that meeting that I realized like how genuine of a person Erin Kruger is.
Right.
She actually just told a story about Kat and how she thought that someone had like killed her in a house. And I just saw like the raw emotion of how much Erin genuinely cared for these women. And and then everything I had going on, and it just like changed everything for me.
Wow. So now you get the stage 4, and this is where I want to dig a little bit, because it's like, I can only imagine, right? The range of emotions. Like, I feel like me personally, I wouldn't tell a lot of people because just, having a lot of pride, I wouldn't want anyone to feel sorry for me. But I can't, on the other end of it, just imagine, like, I feel like I'd be like angry in the morning, sad in the afternoon. And then like, I don't know, what range of emotions, like when you realize this, like what kind of thoughts started going through your mind, like after this happened that day and the next day?
That day I was just, my sister and my friend at the time, right after I got my appointment, we went and got my favorite breakfast. And that's when I kind of started calling my like really close friends and like letting them know. And I literally just remember sitting at the table being like, what are these people around me thinking that are hearing like this conversation going on? Because I'm just like this weeping girl, young, talking about how I got breast cancer, like telling these people, I really wish I could talk to those people and just like, what were you thinking? But
right.
I initially wasn't going to tell anyone, but I had built such a community in Nashville with yoga and all the things. And I was just so young and it was so scary. And I decided, and I had just gotten baptized, and I just wanted to just like share all of those things. And I just could not believe it. And they told me I had 2 years to live. So it's like, how am I not going to tell like anyone that like I might not be here for the longest time? So I did decide to share my story, and I'm grateful I did, but there are definitely times where I kind of struggled with that. And it's kind of a problem in the breast cancer world. Like, people are ashamed of it. And we talked about that on that Zoom call that I had mentioned with my like breast cancer community, that people hold it in. And I'm so grateful I didn't, because I was dealing with so much like depression and stuff at the time as well. And had I done it, like, I don't know if I would be here today. And my community has lifted me up so much. Like, I'm so grateful I decided to share.
That's awesome. Now, when you obviously got the diagnosis and they tell you 2 years to live, which sometimes a part of me, it just gets angry that doctors do that, because I feel like they're putting a stupid limit on, like, they just, like, it kills your mindset. But
exactly,
was your mindset like initially like making preparations to fight this and win, or making preparations to make peace with everything in case he's right? Like what direction did you go mentally?
I definitely went with, oh crap, I only have 2 years to live. And you can kind of see that with like what I've been doing these like past 18 months, because I started traveling more and I really started like living my life. And I can credit that a lot to Erin. After I was diagnosed, I flew to California, and Aaron launched a GoFundMe for me, and I raised such a generous amount of money that I was able to do all this traveling while I was, dealing with my cancer. And because of that, it didn't hold me back. And I am so grateful that I did those things because it really filled up my cup. And not a lot of people have that privilege to do those things. And because of that, I made cancer fun. And that's really what my foundation is about. And I'm just so grateful that I was able to do all those things.
Yeah. And I'm torn as well because I feel like one of the things that really could make cancer worse is stress. And I feel like a lot of people, when they get cancer, they just stress themselves out even more. And you went the opposite direction. You started living your life, but I bet you got a lot of shit for that from people, whether they told you or didn't tell you.
Yeah.
I bet you got a lot of shit for doing that. I bet a lot of people, family, parents, and I can only imagine, but we're just like, you're stupid. You shouldn't be doing this shit. Like, you need to be taking care of your health. Just talk a little bit about that. Like, is that what you experienced?
I definitely do wonder, like, how many people are like, what the heck is Erika doing right now? But I mean, I was going through cancer treatment, and you're supposed to, like, I had a lady tell me she literally did not leave her house. And every time her husband came in, he had to like shower before he was allowed to see her, kind of like how people are with like COVID.
Right.
Like, that's how they act, like, were treating their life during this hardcore chemo they were doing. And meanwhile, I'm like traveling on airplanes back and forth to Nashville. I went to New York. I was in California. Like, I was doing all these things. And my parents definitely were like, I know they were like, wish that I would just stay in Pittsburgh and like be sick. Like, everyone was expecting me to like be ill, but I felt so great. Like, I had like some chemo side effects, but I did not feel nearly as terrible as everyone had prepped me for. And so because I didn't, and I had all these like resources, I was like, well, I'm going to travel. I'm going to go see my friends that I haven't seen in so long because I haven't had the time or the money to do so. And so I just started going to my friends, and would like literally get chemo and then the next day drive to New York.
Wow. Wow. Now, I mean, obviously I can imagine your conversations are different, right? More vulnerable. Cause I imagine obviously, most people, I'd say a lot of the conversations they have on a day-to-day are just surface conversations, right? Like, hey, how's it going? What's up? How's the kids? How's the family? But, you can imagine when something like this happens, it's like they're more meaningful, right? Is that what you experienced? Like, were they just better experiences?
Yes and no, because like when I first got diagnosed, like I put on this big happy smile, but like I did not want to go back to Pittsburgh. And my family, like the way that I ended up going to Pittsburgh was because I had a scan done, and it showed that I had like a fracture in my right hip, and the doctor in Nashville wanted to do surgery, and luckily everyone was on spring break. And I was like, well, I'm not going to take like your like fifth lineup doctor because everyone's gone. And so I actually flew back to Pittsburgh that night and had a second opinion with my current oncologist here in Pittsburgh, and basically got stuck in Pittsburgh and had to start chemo treatment here, which was one of the probably best things that ever happened.
That's good. That's really good. Okay, so this was, we're talking almost a year ago, or even more. Like, can you update everybody that's listening right now? Like, where are you at right now? Because you were diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. What's going on right now? Like, you've had a lot of tests and therapy. Like, can you just update, like, what's the status currently?
Yeah. So one of my biggest cancer fears did come true. December, I had to do 10 rounds of brain radiation, which was so crazy. That's kind of when cancer got a little bit scary. And then I crushed that. Saw you at the Christmas party. My last.
That's right.
After my last day of radiation, still had my hair. And then my cancer had also come back to my right breast as well. So I was doing chemo for a little while, and then COVID happened. So I missed like a month of treatment because I had some things going on in my lungs, and I wasn't sure if it was COVID. My scans were so blurry that they weren't sure if it was pneumonia, it could be cancer. And then I got a CT scan, and it showed that it was probably cancer. And then the next day I woke up and I just walked from my bed to the bathroom, and I was like, I could not catch my breath. And my mom was like, ambulance. And I was like, you're overreacting. And she was like, ambulance. So the ambulance came, and I'm so grateful she did, because they gave me a breathing treatment. I was like, oh, thank goodness. And I spent like 5 days in the hospital, and they did a bronchoscopy, which is one of the worst tests I've ever had to do. I'm like choking on phlegm, and they're like shoving things down my throat. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And then those results came back that the cancer did spread to my lungs. And earlier in March, I found out that the cancer also spread to my skin, but the skin of my right breast. But because of COVID and what was going on in my lungs, surgeries were canceled. Plus, I couldn't handle it. So my doctor put me on more of an intense chemo that I'm on now. And I did 3 rounds of that this month of June. And then they gave me a month off for just my gene targeted therapy. And because I'm stage 4, I'll have to do at least that for like the rest of my life, they say. And then next week I meet with my oncologist, and I'm going to try and convince him to give me a medicine that's not as intense, so I won't lose my hair, just because I'm feeling so much better. But I was on like consistent 24/7 oxygen, where I was having to like walk around the house. We couldn't turn the gas on unless like the oxygen's off.
Which is, I mean, I want to interject for a second. Like, you look great right now, but I mean, we're like, for those listening, we're talking a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Like just a couple of weeks ago, you were on oxygen. I mean, you look so different 2 weeks ago than you do now.
Yeah.
Like it's mind blowing.
It blows my mind. And really the only thing that you like can tell that I have been sick for a few months is I'm so skinny right now. I got down to like 113, and I started cancer at like 155. So I'm trying to pack on the pounds.
Yeah. Eating butter.
Everyone's like, go to McDonald's, eat a Big Mac. And I was like, you don't know me. And that's really
Yes.
I've been eating so much food, and it's been really fun.
That's good. Now, are you, I mean, obviously, you know, the diagnosis is still like from the doctors anyway, it's still like you still have stage 4. Like, are they still giving you the same timelines right now? Like you only have this long to live? Like, are they more hopeful now? Like, because you're responding to treatment? Like, what's the latest?
Yeah. And I've been responding really well to my treatments when I'm on the right one. So that's been very nice. But the 2-year thing is just kind of like a benchmark for like just metastatic breast cancer patients. I think my doctor is just very surprised. I think I surprised him the most out of all of his like cancer patients that I'm doing so well, considering just my diagnosis and how many places the cancer has been. But yeah, I don't know. Like I tell myself that it's going to go away, even though it's like a forever thing. But then like I do these Zoom calls, and people are like, oh, you need to talk to my friend. Like, she has been like 6 years, and it's like, oh wow, that's still like really short, like 6 years.
Absolutely.
Like, it's not a lot of time.
And I believe that. And I want to tell a quick story, because this is something that happened to me, and I really believe that what you tell yourself. There's a book that I recommend everybody reads that's listening to this, and it's called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by Shad Helmstetter. One of the best books I've ever read. And, you know, mind over matter, it's just like a saying to a lot of people, but it's true. So when I was in the military, I had this mental block, and my goal for probably 6 months was to bench press 225 pounds, which was 2 plates on each side. And it was like, no matter what I did, how hard I worked out, I just could not bench press 225. And I mean, we're talking 6 months of trying, and I couldn't push it all the way up without support. And I could get 205, I could get 215. It was just 225 was like this barrier. And so I remember one day I was warming up. My buddy came and he was spotting me. And so I was going to do a warm up with 215. And then I was going to try to get 225. And I went, I laid down, and he put 215 on there, and I pressed it up. It was really no problem. And I was like, all right, man, let's do 225. And he's like, that was 225. And I was like, what? And he's like, because he put like little weights on there, and I didn't realize that he actually had put 225 on there, and I pushed it up no problem. And there was a really important lesson that I learned at that time. And it was just like, man, it's really all in your mind to an extent, right? Like, I mean, I'm not going to put 495 on there and be like, come on, John, you got this, bro. Like, let's go. But, it's crazy how powerful the mind is when it comes to everything. I want to switch gears a little bit because this is where I really want to have you share your wisdom with the audience. Because as well as all of us, the one thing that we all have in common is we all are going to die. Like we all, we don't know when, we don't know how, none of us know any of that, but you have an insight based on doctors telling you things that you can share something that I think could really help everybody. And so I just want to dive into that a little bit. So throughout all of this, like, what's your biggest fear? Like, what are you the most afraid of right now?
Yeah. Whenever I first started thinking about this, I was like, I don't really know what I'm scared of. I'm not really afraid of like death anymore. I've kind of figured that out. But
so you're not afraid of death. How did you make peace with that? Like, I just want to know how you did that.
it's actually pretty crazy. The day that I found out that my breast cancer returned in October of 2018, or no, that would have been 2019, like right before my brain radiation and stuff. My dad got hit by a car the exact same day. And I wasn't going to tell anyone about my breast cancer until like I got my biopsy results back. But again, the doctor was kind of like, if it's not breast cancer, what is it? Like, it's breast cancer kind of thing. And then my dad got hit by a car and I was like, oh my God, like, it's like you can have cancer, or like literally you could just be walking and someone could just hit you with their car. You have no idea. And I think at that point, that's when it kind of like really switched for me, that like everyone, like you said, like anyone could die at any moment.
That's right.
And there was this woman who I'm still really good friends with, but she kind of, with these Love Over Fear shirts, it's kind of where it came from. And she was just like, send me an email of everything you're feeling right now. Cause I was just really down in the dumps, really dealing with like survivor's guilt because I had just crushed chemo and I'm like, okay, now what? And she was like, this next chapter of your life is going to be about choosing love over fear. And so, with taking that on, like, what are you going to do with that? And I was like, you're so right. Like, I can't live out of the fear that I'm going to like die in 2 years. And I'd be lying if I said that this Easter was, different because of COVID.
Sure.
And everyone was out on the back porch and I was terrified to go out because no one was social distancing really. And I was like, this is going to be my like last Easter. Like, why isn't my family accommodating, or this potentially could be my last Easter. Like, why isn't my family accommodating more to like making sure I could be out there? And I was just sitting in my room crying about it. And I was like, it was all just because I was scared of getting COVID. And I let that hold me back from like spending Easter with my family. And it's like, okay, well, you could get hit by a car, you could get COVID. Like really, what is there to be scared of? Like,
That's
if
right.
you don't do it, you don't even know. And so I think that took a lot of it away. Just like,
that's awesome. Then that's very helpful. Like, are you ever angry? Like why me? Like, do you ever just tell yourself like, man, I'm in my 20s, I'm healthy, I've done all the right things, I ate all the right things. Like, how the fuck could something like this happen to me? I don't have a history of cancer in my family. Like, did you ever think that, or do you still think that?
Yeah. Well, at first, like when I first got diagnosed, I remember taking a bath and just being like kind of relieved. I was like, oh my gosh, like I knew something was going on. Like, I know I'm going to get the help I need. Like, I kind of just like felt like relief from it. And then, like recently I made the decision to retire my real estate license, and it was really, really hard because I've always had like 3 jobs and like
Sure.
my job was my identity. And it's just like, I could be in Nashville right now with one of the like most badass real estate teams, just crushing it. And here I am at home living at my parents' house. And I'll have moments where like I'll let that like make me mad because I want to be doing something else. But then I've been able to do so much with my foundation since then. It's like, okay, this is all happening for a reason and
Right.
I'm not in charge. But then all of a sudden I'll get news that cancer spread to my brain. And I'm like, seriously, I didn't even have a headache and there's cancer in my brain. Like, what? Like, what?
Right.
And then I'm like, I've been eating healthy. I've been doing this, but, whenever I do get like new diagnosis, like it's always when I'm not in a very good mental state. So it's hard for me to be angry because I'm like, okay, well, I knew this was going to happen. I've been like really depressed and down lately. And when cancer moved to my lungs, like everything was going on with COVID and it was winter here in Pittsburgh. So I've been not feeling the best. And then now the sun is finally out and like you can see my mood and just like how I'm feeling has been so much more upbeat and everything's going on. So it's
That's absolutely, absolutely. Now, do you have any regrets, like at all?
Yeah. Yes, because one of my big fears is that I potentially won't like meet my husband and like have a family, and that really wasn't something that I ever considered for myself until getting cancer and like
Sure.
seeing that and like really craving that. And one of my biggest regrets is that I hadn't really prioritized that like earlier in my life. Like I have, well, all of my friends really have like significant others, and I spent more time focusing on that one guy who like I
Sure.
never should have talked to, but taught me so much. But also, it just never was really a priority for me. And I always told myself I didn't want to have kids. Like I don't want to get married. My parents are divorced. So I kind of always put it to the back burner. But
So you would want kids now, like if you,
yeah, if
gotcha.
I have kids, there will be miracles because I've technically like have gone through like menopause and like all this stuff. So if I ever have kids, like they are God's gift and they are supposed to be here.
That's awesome.
But
Now,
also like I can adopt and stuff.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's plenty I like me and Kat, we feel the same way, right? Like whether it's our own kids or whether we adopt kids, like, it's just putting who you are, your knowledge into a younger person, a younger generation, and
Right.
teaching. It's like, to me, it makes no difference whether it's biological or not. Like we both feel the same way. Like it really makes no difference to us, because if you mold a baby into an adult, it's like everything that you are is in them anyway, whether or not they're like blood is just blood. Who cares? Like that's how we look at
My
it.
family is set up right now.
Yeah, exactly. So is there advice that you would give listeners just in regards to the perspective that you have now? Like, is there a lesson that you've only learned with a brush with death that you wish everyone out there would know?
Yeah. I would say don't wait until the cancer diagnosis to start like living your life. Like,
And what do you mean by living it? Like, do you mean traveling, having great, or all of it? Like, do you mean like what, like when you say live your life, what are you doing now that's really different? Are you just living carefree, having better conversations, traveling more? Like when you say living your life, what does that mean to you?
I would say I do a lot more of like what I want to do. Like I'll think
There you
about
go.
like what I want to happen. Like for my birthday, I like all I want to do is eat bar taco and at True Food. So I'm like, where am I going to do that? So I honestly am thinking about going to Nashville because the only thing that's holding me back is this fear of potentially getting COVID. It's like I can take steps to do that, but like if COVID didn't happen, what would I be doing on my birthday? I would be going to Nashville to eat at those places and do what I want to do. And this morning, actually, I was like, I'm going to do it. And so I texted my friend. I was like, what are you doing on June 30th? And she was like, nothing. I was like, you want to get dinner? And I'm like, I think I'm going to go if I can get like find somewhere like safe for me to stay. But
That's right.
like doing those kind of things, it's like people are working jobs that they completely hate. Like they're just miserable working for a paycheck. And I've really learned that like money is not everything. Like because
right.
of my GoFundMe and experiencing what that feels like, I really learned that I had been prioritizing the wrong things and I wasn't prioritizing family. Like I'm so much closer with my family now. And
Mm,
I am not like working paycheck to paycheck and like I'm not working to be making like 100K this year. Like I would be fine with 90K a year now. Like with
right.
the lifestyle I can like be happy with and do the things I can do. But before I was like, I need to be a millionaire and I need to work and do all this stuff. But like those things really aren't important because at the end of the day,
Abs-
if I die and have a bunch of money in my bank account,
absolutely.
what's
What
it matter?
exactly? So, Eric, if you beat this, do you think you'll live a much different life than before? Like, or what would you do differently? Like, let's say
Yeah,
you fully recover, you beat it, you're in complete remission. What will you do differently moving forward?
it's crazy to hear you say that because it's like someone who has metastatic breast cancer, like there technically like is no remission. And
Mm,
I really struggled with that after my first like 6 rounds of chemo because a doctor told me that I had no kinds of like disease in my body. And I was like, what already? Like this is unheard of. And that was not actually the case. And so that's when I learned that I'm going to be on treatment for the rest of my life. Like they're telling me every 3 weeks, I'm going to have to be getting this gene targeted therapy. So it's still hard for me to like accept that potentially is my reality, but also I'm a firm believer in the mind over matter.
That's right.
And I'm like, it's going to go away. I'm going to be in remission. I'm going to be one of those people. I'm going to be the radical remission that people are like, whoa, this is wild. Like, how did she do this? So, honestly, like I've been trying recently to like do my 1 to 5 year plans. And I just see this like next year being a lot about like healing and like taking like all the stress out of my life, which is why I decided to retire my real estate license, because
Right.
it was stressing me out trying to get my credits. And I had been praying on it. And every time I had a class, I was either in the bathroom with diarrhea because of my chemo treatments, or I had a last minute like CT scan and it just wasn't working. And I was like, okay, Erika, just like notice this, like take the stress out of your life right now. You don't need it. Like,
Right.
and so I did that. And then I'd like after that, I'm like really hoping that I am in remission and I can make my way back to Nashville and get back to doing either like traveling and teaching yoga or getting back to doing real estate and maybe 2 years or 5 years. But I just see myself getting back to doing the things that I like love.
Right.
And
Do you think money will ever be as important to you as it once was?
no, but I also, my relationship with money has really
Sure.
changed. My family was never really well off. We were always, I have 3 other brothers and sisters, and money was a struggle with me growing up. And my dad does real estate stuff, and he was always very cheap and
Yep.
never really shared it. And I remember one day when I was thinking about quitting my corporate job, I asked him like what his thoughts were, and I was like, "Why did you grow up? Like, or why are you the way you are?" And he's like, "Well, I never wanted to grow up poor." And then I thought about my life, and I was like, "What?" I was like, "We did grow up poor." And once he said that, and I was like, "It's not worth it." And so I think my thoughts with money will change, but it also comes to me a lot easily. Like all of a sudden, it'll just like pop up in the mail, or like random things will happen, and I just haven't had to worry about it. So because I haven't had to worry about it, like this stress has just kind of been taken off my plate for the first time in my entire life, and that stress has like been so helpful with my healing. Like
Right.
God knew what he was doing whenever he brought Aaron Kruger into my life to help me with that GoFundMe. Like,
And that's really incredible. And we're going to talk about that before we wrap up here in just a few minutes. So I want to ask you kind of a deep question, something that, I mean, obviously it's scary to think through. And I apologize ahead of time before asking you this, but it's something that, there's a company out there that I really believe in. And I think there's a few companies that do this, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's like Legacy or something like that. And it's where like you can go to this company and they make a series of videos that they will give to your family in case something like happens to you, right? Like let's say you die in a car accident
yeah,
and randomly, and you never got to tell your kids all the things that you wanted to tell them, and you never, so that's what this company does, right? It's like they make you take the time and you make these videos, like, and everybody does it differently, right? Like some people will like make a video for their son at age 16 and then 21 and then at their wedding day, and it's just like, and it's really powerful. I think it's such a beautiful concept. But I want to ask you, if you, let's say that you don't beat this, what do you want your legacy to be? Like what lesson do you want to leave the world with? What do you want to, like, what piece of Erika do you want to share with everybody that could really help them?
yeah. That's really hard to say because I feel like I'm still building that Erica now that I've like
Right.
stepped into this like new mindset. And like I used to be just like very cranky. Like when my family sees like people saying I'm inspiring and stuff, they're like, God, Erica used to be such a bitch. Like I used to be so mean to my brothers and sisters and my mom, and like even now I still pick on them because they don't like eat healthy or do healthy things. And uh,
Yeah.
I really just want I want people to remember me as just someone who had fun, like having cancer. Like I want people to start, like, it makes me so sad seeing like these women not wanting to like tell people, and not like, just like hearing that they're not even like getting out of their beds. I'm like, you have no idea how beneficial like just going out in the sun for a few minutes would like do for you. And I just want people to like really just take on the spirit that I've had while having breast cancer, and not letting that like get them down.
Absolutely. I love that. They say that your mess becomes your message and your test becomes your testimonial. And so, I feel like when you beat this, that it doesn't even have to be real estate, right? Like, I think a lot of people, you could inspire and help a lot of people that are just experiencing what you're experiencing now. There's a need for that. There's a really big need for that, because you can go there with somebody that nobody else can go there with, right? Like, your parents, they love you, they raised you, but they can't go that deep with you because it's not like they've been through it, right? And so now that you're here and you're going through it, like, I feel like you could help a lot of people. You really could. I remember, and I put it in the notes that I sent to you, Holly Butcher. I don't know if you read that letter.
I loved rereading that. Oh my gosh.
Oh man, and for those listening, Holly Butcher is a young girl that she passed away at age 27 of cancer. But before she passed, she like wrote this letter of all the things that just the advice she's giving people that they should be doing, the things that you think are important aren't important. Go live your life, go do things. And this letter went viral. And I mean, I like bawled my eyes out reading it. And it's just, and to me, it's so powerful because, a lot of people, they get 80, 90 years on earth. But if you really look back, I'd say a lot of them only lived one of them or two of them, like, and so this is just a really, really, really crazy situation that you get to reflect. So let me ask you, I mean, you look great. Like, how do you feel right now? Like, do you, like, truly, is it tired, hopeful, scared, strong, worried? Like, how do you feel like overall right now?
Right now I feel like really good, but I'd be lying if I said that I didn't find out that a like friend that I have that has cancer found out that like a tumor doubled in size in her brain just like randomly out of nowhere. That like I'm not scared sometimes that after I get a scan that's going to be the case, but
Sure.
I think just because I'm so hopeful because I've been dealing with like outside of even cancer, like just mental health struggles for so long and not telling everyone about it. This is really the first time in my life I've like opened up about those things. And just with my talk on Zoom on Friday, realizing that I can make such a big impact just by talking about that stuff. And I finally talked to my family about that stuff. And I think that's why we're doing so well. And I never thought that I would be here 2 years ago before I got breast cancer.
Absolutely. And that's another really important lesson. I mean, I think so. It's just like, we all hold this stuff in, right? And we think if we talk about it, something bad's going to happen, right? Like they're going to judge me but almost 100% of the time it strengthens the like 100%. I don't think there's ever a situation where it crushes, like it just strengthens the relationship when you're vulnerable and you talk about that. It's something that I wish that I talked to my dad. My dad passed away less than 2 years ago. And we always had those like pride conversations. Like we never told each other what was really going on. Dad would always be like, how's it going? I'm like, oh, everything's great. But I would never tell him like really like, man, cause I went through a divorce in 2013 and I kept that all in because I had this like just face to make in front of everybody, but I never told him, like how bad it was and how crazy it got. And like, so it's really awesome that you said that. Erika, this has been an incredible interview. I have to close with a couple of things. Number one, you have a nonprofit that you're really focusing on. Talk about that. I'm going to put it all in the show notes, so don't worry, but I want you to talk about the nonprofit. What does it stand for? What are you doing? How can people support? How can people contribute? Can you just share that really quick?
Yes. So my non-for-profit is called Bloom Foundation Gives, and my sister actually created it when she was getting her, I forget what the degree is called, but she had to do this project, and she was actually working on something and completely dropped everything to start researching metastatic breast cancer. And so that's what the foundation was about. And she was actually the one that really pointed out that my life was only 2 years long. And I was like, oh my gosh. Because of that, I kind of pushed it to the side. And then after brain radiation and Aaron's generous gift from Christmas, I was like, I'm going to do this. And I really just want the whole point of Bloom to be about making breast cancer fun for everyone and doing what I can to like help with that and just like mind, body, spirit kind of thing, because
Sure.
I'm so focused on that. Because there's so many foundations raising money for like research and this and that. I just want ours to be about having fun.
Right.
So, so I started that and kind of had to put it on pause while I was sick. And then just recently was like, okay, well, if I can't do my 16 hours of continued education, what if I put that towards Bloom? And we were to do the shopping spree fundraiser. And we actually have our next fundraiser coming up. I'm like launching it on my birthday at the end of the month. I'm super excited. But we'll be selling t-shirts again. I made these ones. So I came up with a new design.
Dude, that's a great shirt.
Thanks.
You made that?
That's my handwriting.
That's like, wow. That's an incredible shirt.
After that story I told you.
Yeah.
The slogan. And then these new ones are "Yes, I Cancer," but the cancer is like crossed out. When I worked,
I love that.
Kind of like your email, but when I worked at Lululemon, my friend was like, "I make my emails an affirmation," so I made mine "Yes, I Can." And I came up with that the other day because I'm on a steroid right now and I literally cannot sleep and my mind is always racing. But
dude, I love that. Like, you've got to go ahead and create that link. Let me have it. I'll put it everywhere. That's incredible. How can people follow you on social media? Are you still active at all? Like, or do you do any videos or anything that is like inspiring, or people that are maybe going through something similar can follow you? I mean, maybe you don't have the energy to do it, but how can people follow you?
Yeah, so when I am in a good mood and posting things, you can follow me at Erika, Erika, Growing Rich on Instagram, and then Bloom, and then Team Erika on Facebook to kind of keep up with the up to dates, and then bloomfoundation.gives that's our website, that's our Facebook, that's our Instagram. But
awesome.
We're currently looking for people to that have just recently been either diagnosed with breast cancer or who are dealing with stage 4 metastatic to give away our first round of cancer care bags too. And they're going to be so awesome. I'm so excited for these. They're going to just be full of so much goodness that I am just so excited to give to women.
That's awesome. Well, I can't wait to promote the heck out of it. I had one other question that I wanted to ask before we wrap up today, because this is another thing that, it's really interesting. The last 12 months, I've had more people that I know get cancer than ever in my whole entire life. And I wanted to ask, because there's a lot of information out there and a lot of it is conflicting. And I'm sure you have had your own struggles with, like, holy shit, like, who's right, who's wrong. Like, I'm sure everybody's cramming their advice down your throat. Like, you need to drink this, you need to eat this, you need to do this. Have you thought about doing this? Like, is there anything that you've learned so far in your journey that has been helpful, that is like the opposite of what is just all over the internet? Is there anything that, like, you've learned from a doctor or doing your own research in your own journey that is like contradictory, or like anything that's helpful?
Yeah. For one, this is why I'm so grateful that you guys are creating this app Mentor, because like that is what you need whenever you get like cancer. Like, you need a mentor, someone that's going to be like, this is actually what happens. Because people scared the crap out of me when I first got diagnosed. They were like, just like, so Aaron's husband, Doug, he dealt with cancer when he was younger, and like his experience was completely different than mine, but it was so much more like intense and crazy. And so that's what I was expecting. And that's not what happened at all. And even to this day, he's like, I just can't believe Erika is like doing cancer like this. And I'm like, yes, Doug, stop telling me your scary story. But just like that, I would just benefit so much from talking to someone like me as opposed to a doctor, because they're scary. But honestly, read The Radical Remission, because it is a game changer. Like, it's taught me more about like how to view cancer and what to do about it, as opposed to like treatments and surgeries, which I haven't had to do yet. So I haven't like experienced that like side of things.
Sure.
But I just really encourage people to read that book, because it kind of just like sums everything up. And it's been such a game changer for me.
That's
like
awesome.
All of my tricks are in that book. So I'm including that in our cancer care bag. So
I love that. And then that'll also be in the show notes. Erika, this has been an unbelievable interview. And actually, I hope we can do it again in a couple of months. Like, I feel like this was more meaningful than, because a lot of my interviews are success and money. And it's talking with someone like you that makes me really understand that that's not what's important, right? Like, those things aren't bad, but what's important is, are you spending your time doing what you feel like you're meant to do, enjoying life, having great relationships, not just chasing the dollar, which, and not all countries are like that. America is, I think, one of the worst. It's just like everybody has this mentality that you need to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if you're not at this certain status. And it's interviews like this that,
like that.
exactly, same with us too. And it really is, it's interviews like this that makes me really realize, like, man, I need to slow down. I need to spend time with people that mean a lot. I need to live, there's that saying, right? Live like today's your last day. And nobody fucking does it, right? Like it's like one of those sayings. It's like, oh yeah, fucking cool. Let me put it on my wall and never look at the shit. But really, it's important to do that, at least make an effort to do that. So this has been absolutely incredible. I hope to have you on again in a couple of months. And I hope in the next interview that your hair is super long and you've sold 1 million t-shirts and yeah, you're a master yogi yourself, but I'm excited. I'm excited for you, and we all support you. We pray for you. And I just want to thank you for taking time out of your day to be on here to share an important message with everybody.
Yes, and happy Father's Day again. And thank you so much for having me. Seriously, I've been looking forward to this, and I'm
me too.
Still sweating.
Yeah, me too. I got rained on. Absolutely. Well, thank you, Erika. Appreciate that.